Have you ever done this common thing where you're talking to someone and they're explaining something to you, and you actually don't really know what they're talking about? But obviously, you don't want them to know that. You don't want them to think that you're not getting what they're saying. You want them to think that you're agreeable, relatable, and understanding. So you respond with something like, "Oh yeah, totally." Like, you don't just kind of understand. No, you get it firsthand. You know exactly what they're talking about. I know I definitely do this sometimes. And recently, someone did this to me, and it didn't really land very well. In fact, it kind of had the opposite effect. It felt like this person was being overly understanding to the point where it was being feigned. To the point where I didn't feel like they were really listening to what I was saying. To the point where it actually didn't feel like they understood at all. A paradox in the truest of sorts. But let me back up. This all happened at a friend's birthday dinner where I was seated across from someone who I had never met before. Throughout dinner, we talked a lot about what we did for work, what we liked and didn't like about our jobs, and what parts of them we were good at. And honestly, I really liked this person. He was funny and interesting to talk to, but he was also very engaged in the conversation, which I really appreciated. But then there came a point where I was talking about something kind of complex. It was a very specific thing from my field of work that most people wouldn't be familiar with. Something you generally wouldn't understand right away without knowing all the background context. So I was trying my best to explain it, knowing that it was a tricky thing to comprehend. But as I was doing so, it just felt like he was being overly understanding. Too understanding. Oh yeah, totally. He was responding like he understood everything firsthand. Like he knew exactly what I was talking about. Only it didn't feel genuine. He shouldn't have understood everything because I hadn't explained it all yet. And I wasn't doubting that he was a smart and intelligent person, which he obviously was. I gave him the benefit of the doubt initially. But the more I talked about it, the more it became obvious that he was only pretending to understand what I was talking about. It was like someone saying, "Okay, got it," when you haven't finished explaining everything and you know that they don't got it. And I mean, I recognized what he was doing because I do it too. But in that moment, it honestly just felt like he wasn't really listening to what I was saying. By trying to be overly understanding, it came across like he actually didn't understand at all. It kind of seemed like he was just agreeing for the sake of being friendly and relatable. Anyway, that was one small part of what was otherwise a very pleasant conversation. But it made me start to think about all the times that I do this as well. And honestly, I think I do this a lot. I always want people to feel fully understood when they're talking to me. I want them to feel like what they're saying makes complete sense to me. And so, even if I don't fully understand, I will often pretend like I do. I will be overly understanding. And now that I think about it, I'm sure there's definitely been times where I was overly understanding. Maybe to the point where they thought, does he actually understand, or is he just trying to be nice? Overly understanding to the point where maybe they thought I wasn't being genuine or sincere. Overly understanding to the point where maybe they felt like I actually didn't understand at all. And I think there's a subtle but very noticeable difference between being understanding and being too understanding. And the key difference between these two things is your approach and how you listen to people. If you're being too understanding, you're most likely either listening to respond, where you're mainly just waiting for your turn to talk, or listening to relate, where you mainly just want them to feel like you get them. You're letting them say their piece, but you're not actually taking the time to absorb, process, and truly understand what they're saying. And even though they're two different things, it's pretty easy to tell when you're talking to someone and they're either listening to respond or listening to relate. Yeah, they might be letting you talk, but it often doesn't feel like they're even taking in what you're saying. On the flip side, being truly understanding means listening to understand. And that is a very different thing. When you listen to understand, you are fully processing what they say before you confirm your understanding of it. And if you don't understand, then you ask more questions about it until you do. It's also pretty easy to tell when you're talking to someone and they are listening to understand. And now that I've experienced this, where someone was being overly understanding, and I could tell that they were just listening to relate rather than listening to understand, it's opened my eyes to the paradox. The paradox of trying to be overly understanding, but then actually coming across as not understanding at all. I straight up do not want to come across that way, ever. So going forward, I'm going to try really hard not to be overly understanding. Rather than listening to respond, which I don't think I do that often, and listening to relate, which I know I do, I'm going to focus more on listening to understand. And I mean, if I want people to feel fully understood when they're talking to me, what better way to do that than by asking them more questions? It seems counterintuitive, but people will feel much more understood if you say, hey, I actually don't understand what you're talking about. Can you explain that a bit more? Rather than just hitting them with an, oh yeah, totally. That just shows that they're actually trying to fully understand you rather than possibly just pretending to. So hopefully that's what I'll be doing more of in the future. And if this resonated with you at all, I hope it's something you'll consider as well. On that note, you might be interested in watching this video, which talks about how to have a terrific conversation with someone you've just met. Otherwise, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.